Hi everyone, my name's Agnes Watkinson from NextGen Professional. Today we have Marina. I am not going to attempt your last name. I am so sorry. Marina is from Flynn. She is the Senior Business Development Manager. We are going to be talking in collaboration. This is a new podcast in collaboration with CAWIC, which is the Canadian Association of Women in Construction. They have done me the honor of asking myself to represent women, do this podcast, and hopefully enlighten and have a lot more women join the construction movement. Marina, can you please pronounce your last name and introduce yourself?
Sure, you pronounce every letter, so it's a Vrzalkovski.
Vrzalkovski.
There you go.
Yeah. Oh, I got that. That wasn't that hard.
The first try.
I thought there was going to be a silent letter there or something.
No. So that's why I didn't take my husband's last name, because he has silent letters in his. So I figured I'll just stick with the longer one where you have to pronounce every letter.
Well, the better of the two evils, right?
Exactly.
Well, Marina, thank you so much for taking this opportunity and speaking with me. Really appreciate it. I was hoping maybe you can introduce yourself, just give a brief synopsis of, who you are and what you're doing over at Flynn.
Yeah, I have a really exciting role as business development manager, but also as a product manager. So there's a really innovative group at Flynn, which has been mostly known as a roofing company in the industry, but they're sort of morphing into and evolving into a full building envelope solution. So I'm part of this really innovative team, which is looking at sustainable construction and the modular industry, which is really up and coming in North America right now. So it's a really exciting position.
Yeah, I am hearing a lot more about modular builds. We are starting to work with a lot more contractors in that space. So I'll probably be asking you about that. That's a bit of a interest of mine. So I'm going to get started with our very first question. Basically, how did you get involved in the construction industry? If you can kind of take your journey all the way back, was it childhood? Sure. Like where did it start?
Yeah, when I was younger, I always gravitated toward the arts and sciences. And I was so blessed that when I entered high school, they had a drafting program. So I took a drafting class, and there was so much interest in the drafting class that it evolved into an architecture class. So I was so lucky that our class trips traveled all through North America, visiting cities, looking at architecture, learning about architects. So it really laid the foundation for me. And also, it's where I was exposed to my first mentor. So I had someone encouraging me to develop and explore a field that traditionally wasn't really open to women. I mean, just going into the tech hall in the high school is like you wouldn't traditionally see a lot of girls in there. But there was a lot of interest in architecture and drafting, and we were lucky to have a teacher that really helped that growth.
Yeah. Marina, that is so interesting. So it was a high school program. Now, are you from high school in Canada or outside of Canada?
Yeah, no, in Scarborough. Yeah.
In Scarborough. I've never heard of a program that had drafting. So did it morph out of the arts program? Is that what you were saying?
It came more out of the, like I said, it was in the tech hall. So it came more out of the technology, like where people were taking machine shop and wood shop, and they had a drafting class. But the teacher had an architectural background. So he noticed that there was some interest in architecture. So they petitioned to have a class, and he had enough people sign up that were interested in the class. And then they started Architecture 1, Architecture 2, and all the way, you could take it all the way to
I love that.
An OAC level. Yeah.
And so you traveled with this, so then you were exposed to different cultures, different types of, I'm assuming architecture, which means potentially different types of construction.
Yeah, we went to Chicago, New York. We went to the suburbs of Oak Park, Pennsylvania to look at suburban architecture. So not just the architecture of the big cities. So yeah, it was great. It's like it's one thing to learn out of a textbook, but it's another to go and experience and then have it like curated, right? So someone telling you really what are you looking at, right? So it was.
Yeah, and you said you were exposed to your first mentor at that point. So can you explain, because the next question kind of bleeds into the next question, which is, talking about being in this male dominated industry and we're going back several years, I'm assuming for your high school. And really this exposure you've had into architecture. Who was your mentor? How did that relationship start?
Yeah, so it was the teacher really from the original drafting class. And When everybody in high school is like, okay, where are you going to go to university? What program are you going to apply to? And I applied to such an array of like marketing, accounting, business development, architecture, engineering. Like it was so broad. Like it's very hard to think the trajectory of your career and what are you supposed to choose to study. And he offered the perspective of there's an avenue to marry the arts with the science, and that was the architecture. So he was a grad of Ryerson, and I knew I wanted to go to Ryerson because of that. So, and it's interesting, as my mentors have evolved in my life, they've all kind of overlapped. So I stayed in touch with them all through university. So even though I gravitated to new mentors within the university environment, I always kept in touch with them.
Okay. And how is that? I mean, being a female, having a male mentor, I usually ask this, like, was it more organic? Did you how did you feel, especially when you're now moving into the university courses and getting these new mentors? Are you finding that your mentors are male professors? Were there women? Like what was the ratio there? And how did it feel having a mentor that was maybe a little bit different from you or a different perspective from you?
Yeah, it's I don't know. I never saw it as like a gender issue. It was just someone I connected with and someone I chose to listen to and follow to and listen to his guidance. And then when I entered university, that's when I was exposed to female mentors, really. So there were some really, really strong female leadership type of personalities that I got exposed to, and I was so lucky to. And they were really a strong influence, I would say, in the architectural program, because it is predominantly you are sort of told you're going into a male industry. So to have that leadership there was so nurturing.
And yeah, so I mean, I've heard the same thing. You're going to be in a male dominated industry.
Yeah.
You're so young when this is happening, and it's scary. It's overwhelming.
Oh yeah.
How did you feel when, you're having this information or this advice being told upon you? Like, how do you feel? Like, is it more of a, okay, then I got to get through it? Or are you scared like when you're going into your next step of your career?
I think really I watched those. There were two particular professors, and one was more artistic and the other one was more technical. And they were great. Like they were the type of teachers that would say, oh, you want to go out for a coffee afterwards? And it wasn't just like when class ended, it's like the relationship didn't stop there. It sort of surpassed that. And I really watched them, how they interacted in the industry. So the difference between a male professor and say them, and how they would approach topics or dealing with people. And I realized that all the traits that are stereotypically, a woman's trait, they leveraged. So kindness, compassion, understanding, they're able to leverage all those things that perhaps a male leader either didn't feel comfortable doing, or it was stereotypical that they shouldn't be doing, or they just clearly didn't have those traits. So I really watched and learned that for them, they were so successful in their leadership roles, and that was something that I wanted to aspire to. So I really learned how to leverage these sort of more feminine, the more internal characteristics, definitely.
That's wonderful. No, I like hearing that. And I'm going to get into the next question because I want to touch back on that again later on. So in terms of barriers, what do you feel was the biggest barrier you faced when you first entered into your construction career? Like, what is your first construction career?
So out of school, it was so difficult. It was like there's a decision. You either in university are going to decide you're going to go for a master's or you're going to enter into the workforce. And I had decided, well, I'm going to take a stab at the workforce. And I would say almost all of my colleagues in the program that were male, they got placements right away. The females was very difficult. So I had put out resumes at every architecture firm. So that was the biggest hurdle that I really even saw translate further into my career. The hurdle was to get the opportunity. Everyone's looking for experience, but then how do you gain the experience if nobody gives you the opportunity?
Right? I know.
the really difficult part. So it's funny. So I wasn't working, and I had a cousin who works at a temping agency, and she said to me, "You're staying at home. Why don't I give you like a 2-week temping placement? You can make some money." So she placed me at a large sort of corporate North American company, and a 2-week temp file job ended up being almost a 5-year career.
Oh, wow.
And I had given up on the thought of entering the construction industry. I had taken IT courses, so I had looked at maybe going into the IT field. Then I got into really heavy regulatory in like a management role. So I really studied a lot of that and ISO training and policies and procedures. And then a friend called me up and she said, "Hey, I work for this construction firm and they're looking for someone. Are you still interested?" And I said, "Yes."
5 years later.
Yeah. Yeah.
Oh man, yeah, and like you said, like you're seeing your peers in school getting picked up left, right, and center. Like that's deflating. I mean, in my books, that's a bit deflating. Like, what's wrong with me,
But
right?
I did find a way to stay involved in the industry. I freelanced on my own. I teamed up with another friend, and we sort of started our own business.
Oh,
So I always kept the creativity and the passion for architecture. It's just that I found it difficult to bridge into the industry, definitely.
what did you end up doing that was on your own?
It was just doing design work. So, doing renovations, additions to houses, doing permit drawings, like anything really, just to stay creative.
That's amazing, though. I mean, that's still construction. You're still in the space. It's
For
just you've
sure, but
made your own niche out of it.
yeah, it just didn't feel like a career, right? It
Right.
felt like a side job, like a just, like you couldn't
Like a
live
hustle,
off of
like a
it.
side
Yeah.
hustle, yeah. But at least you were still keeping your toes in the water. I mean, I still think that's fantastic.
Yeah, I'd say hobby. Yeah.
So you go into this career with your friend, and she's now introduced you to her company, which is a construction company. What was that role? Like, what was your entry role into her organization, and how did that, like, can you just kind of describe the atmosphere you're in?
Sure. It was downtown. So I was working like in the suburbs. So just even like the romance of being downtown was very attractive. I interviewed for that position, I kid you not, 5 times. And every time I'd come back, people would say, "Well, like, what's the holdup? Like, why aren't they hiring you?" And the person that was interviewing me, the manager, said, "I know that I want you. I just want to make sure I place you in the right position." So it was really of just getting to know each other. And he didn't want to place me in a position where I would not be interested and sort of fizzle out. So he decided, "You know what? I think you're really suited for estimating." I told him, I really don't have a lot of knowledge in estimating. It's not really something they teach you theory in architecture school, but they don't really teach you the nuts and bolts of how to cost something. He said, I'm not worried about that. He's like, I have the confidence that you'll be able to learn whatever it is. And so so I started that position, and it was a team of a lot of young professionals. I think I got along with everyone right off the bat, and that's where I was introduced to my next mentor.
I was going to say, it sounds like he gave you a chance. Like he actually was
that opportunity I was looking for.
Yeah, he gave you that foot in the door, and you got to make something of it. But here's the foot in the door, the opportunity, which is wonderful.
Yeah.
So moving into the next, you've kind of gone through a little bit of your career and your background and some barriers. What would be your biggest piece of advice to give to women who are entering either in construction, trade, engineering? Like, what's your biggest piece of advice coming from a woman?
Yeah, my biggest piece of advice is network, build relationships, meet people, attend every seminar, conference, workshop you can, and participate. Because not only are you building relationships and meeting people, you're building your knowledge base.
Yeah.
And be personable. Like, I find a smile or a joke goes a long way. You meet someone, you make a chance encounter, something more organic, and then you never know, 2 years down the line, or a client knocks on the door and you're like, "Oh, hey, we met each other at this seminar." I find like those organic connections, at the end of the day, we're all just people. So that I find has really helped me in the industry. And then the bonus is really you're staying up to date to everything in the industry by attending all these conferences, and you can leverage that, but really it's the connections that you make at them.
You know what, Marina, I have to stop everyone here. 1,000% agree with this. So
Yeah.
I'm not, I'm not here to give people advice on what they want to do with their career. I can guide you along the way. And Marina, you just said it. There are a lot of young people who think that going back to school or getting, that next degree, next certification, exactly what you said. It's the connections you make, it's the experience you gain from
Mhm.
talking to people, from learning more about the industry, but in an organic way. So I just want to like we recently had someone inquire about like, should I go get my MBA? And it was like 28 grand. It was really expensive. This individual is a woman and she's already in, I would say, like the junior to intermediate part of her career. And I remember thinking, no, I don't think you should. She had this incredible opportunity to be at the head of an association that she works under. I'm like, go be the head of that association.
Mhm.
The connections you'll make, the people you're going to encounter, the projects you'll take on are going to give you such a leg into any opportunity in the future
Absolutely. Yeah.
that you would have actually missed out on if you would have gone back to school and got your MBA. And I'm not saying MBAs are awful. I'm not saying that at all. Just, I think you have to weigh the pros and the cons of being organic. And so thank you so much for saying that, because I think people misunderstand what going back to school could actually cost you, not
Oh
just the
yeah.
finances, but in terms of just not being involved in the industry that you need to be involved with.
Yeah,
So
because you'll be so focused on this program that,
yeah.
yeah, you're going to miss out on all these other things
Yeah.
potentially.
And
Yeah.
2020 wasn't a great networking year anyway, so maybe that was your time to go, but you probably missed the boat on that.
But I also recommend, it's not just about attending industry, like particular construction industry seminars or workshops. I tend to participate in things out of the industry also. So I'll go to things about marketing. I've attended marketing conferences, like 3-day marketing conferences, and being exposed to graphic designers and listening to them talk about their creative process, or attending different business conferences, or talking about entrepreneurship and what's the new thing coming, or what's the next thing coming. So branching out also expands sort of your knowledge base and also those connections. So not just
Yeah.
sticking to, if it's architecture, just always mingling with the same architects or the same construction industry professionals, but branching out and meeting someone in a new industry.
Exposure. It's just
Yes.
exposure. Yeah. So how do your quality, this is what I wanted to talk about. We'll go back a little bit. We had mentioned about having, there's sort of these relatively internal female traits that we carry, and compassion and collaborative. Like, I think that's empathy, fairly female. I mean, some men obviously have that, but I think that's just more inherent in females.
Mhm.
So what qualities do you have as a woman that you feel have gained you some success in your career? And I'm going to pull up a quote you said when we first chatted, but I'd be interested to hear that.
Sure. I think, like I mentioned, the ability to go into, say, a very tense or hostile situation and to be able to bring it down a notch,
Mm-hmm.
even just sometimes a woman walking into the room will bring a lot of egos down, whether it's out of embarrassment or out of respect, whatever it is. I think it's important to leverage that. For me, I think my greatest strength has been multitasking. So the ability to be a designer, or the ability to write policies and procedures, or the ability to pitch ideas to management, or to be a project manager on a job. So the ability to quickly switch those hats has always been my strength, definitely. And I think I naturally feel that maybe that's a female characteristic,
Mm-hmm.
but that's not to say that it's exclusively, but I feel that it's definitely been one of my strengths.
You know what, I do think that's an inherently female trait, because I think when you look at, I mean, I know you're a mother, so you're dealing with kids, you're dealing with their well-being, healthcare, education, you're dealing with your own career, your own situation, you're dealing with the household, you're dealing with all these other components, like you're wearing multiple hats at home. And that's not to say, like, again, a father or a man isn't doing the same thing. I just do feel that a lot of that responsibility still traditionally falls onto the female counterpart. And it's really interesting because one of my questions is, have you seen gender, what do you feel is the gender diversification in the construction industry? And I'll just say, project coordinators. So I don't see at the senior level as many females, obviously. But our team is starting to find a lot more junior, like project coordinators entering into more of a project management field. I'm starting to see a lot more women than men. I'm almost going to say 50-50 at this point for project coordinators. What's your experience with diversification between men and women in field or in office?
Yeah. In the office, I've been lucky to work for organizations where you didn't really notice sort of a gender imbalance. But as I progressed in my career, I did realize that females were mostly in supporting roles versus leadership roles. So that's definitely, I think, a gap that we need to bridge. But yeah, I have been lucky to work for employers that supported entry-level positions, giving opportunities to women, training them. I would just like to see more of the development into leadership roles.
Right. And I think it's interesting because, we see leadership, well, my firm deals with a lot of leadership and they're all male and none of them have sat there and said, we don't want women on our team or whatnot. But it's interesting when they do interview women, there's a little bit of a different process there. Like you were saying, you were interviewed 5 times at one point because they wanted to see where you fit in the organization. That is definitely something we notice on our end where women get interviewed differently than men. And the one thing I'll say is their references get checked a lot more. I think that's weird. Like some of our clients will hire a male, no problem, and they won't check references. And then for women, it's like, well, let's get one reference from site, let's get one reference from a client or something. And I think that's a little precarious. Like it just kind of raises my eyebrow, like, let's reconsider that.
I think there's a lot of change to happen, and it's funny. You mentioned about, the role of being a mother and being able to multitask. I think anyone that can manage toddlers can manage a company. And one thing I always teach my little guy and my niece is it takes up to 7 times to try something. So that's something that doesn't just apply to toddlers, but is really the idea that everyone can build new neural pathways in their brain, and it takes repetition. So if you don't like asparagus the first time, let's try it a second time. Let's try it a third time. It takes up to 7 times to try something. So that model's been instilled in the kids for sure, but it applies to everyone, right? So I think there's a lot of change to happen, and it's that moment where, just give someone the opportunity, right? So I think that's still the biggest hurdle that women are facing. I've seen, I've sat in boardrooms where there have been conversations about promotions and looking at, different potential candidates, and their life has been in the consideration. Well, so-and-so just got married. They may be in a family planning stage. So-and-so is single. They have more free time. And it's like, those conversations really shouldn't be happening. And I was lucky enough that in the room, we were able to have an active conversation and flag, whoa, we shouldn't be doing that. But it takes time for that change to evolve and process, because those behaviors are so deep rooted that it takes time, right?
Yeah. So, I mean, we're gonna end this off. This was a great conversation. I'm probably gonna call you offline because I think you have so much more to say. I would love to continue offline.
Absolutely.
But just kind of ending this off, overall, giving women who are starting like their pathway, their journey, what advice would you give to these girls and these youth, and what advice would you give them?
Just reach out. Just reach out to anyone. You Google someone in a position that you want and send them an email, because the likelihood is that you're going to get a response, because that woman was in your shoes a long time ago. So we're all nurturing and supportive, and we all want each other to succeed. So don't be afraid to reach out. The worst is that you don't get a response and then you just move on to the next person. But it's just really taking the chance.
Oh, I love that. That's an amazing piece of advice. Yes, reach out, ladies.
Yes.
Get someone to help you out through this. It's going to be a rough road, but I'm sure somebody
And
will get you
you're
through
welcome
it.
to put my contact information out. Absolutely. Anyone can reach out to me. I'd be happy to talk to them.
Will do. I think we'll put it at the end of the post then, for sure.
Right.
Marina, thank you so much. Again, this is for CAWIC, for Construction Association of Women, Canadian Association of Women in Construction, CAWIC. Marina is from Flynn. She's the Senior Business Development Manager, and I am Agnes from NextGen Professional. So thank you, Marina, and I'm going to be talking with you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you. Bye.